Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Naomi. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really like the structure of this episode. It is that thing of, right, you're kind of there's this developing mystery, and it's interesting how this episode is like full of mystery and how it kind of parallels Annabelle's obsession with Agatha Christie novels, because she's referencing them the entire time, which I love. That, like, right, her boyfriend's all about aliens, sci-fi stuff, and like Lord of the Rings, and she's like super into Agatha Christie books and stuff like that. She's referencing them all the time. But the line she says of, yeah, like, there's always room, always time for one more twist, and I'm like, this episode was structured around that nicely, and I thought that was so interesting. But we're picking up where the last episode left off, where Naomi's trying to figure out who is the alien. Like, someone she knows might be an alien, and so now she has to figure out, all right, it's someone here at the party, and now for her, it's like, right, that means someone's been lying to me. But it's like, right, whoever they are, maybe they don't know that they're an alien, but they'll have to find out. But there's a group, there's at least like 40 people downstairs, so it's like, who could it be? In my immediate mind, I was like, number one suspect on my list last episode was Lourdes, but I'm like, because we never found out what she was actually up to. She just says it was personal, but I'm like, I'm wondering what that was about. That seems interesting. Maybe it has to deal with her family situation, because it seems like there's stuff that gets brought up a little bit, especially the comic book store stuff last episode. It seems, and maybe that has to correlate with some aspects of, because there's certain things that, like, the fact that she doesn't want to say anything, I'm like, I'm wondering about certain aspects of Laura's circumstances, but I'm not going to go into them right now. We'll see if as the season progresses, whether that ends up being the case or not. But I have an idea. I'm wondering, like, oh, could that be what she could be hiding? Maybe she feels like it's such a personal thing. She doesn't. Could it be that she's actually sick or something, and maybe she's getting some? There's another thought I had. Like, I was thinking, like, maybe she's getting treatment in the area or something like that. I forgot what she was saying. She never really went into, like, giving even an excuse. She was just like, no, it's something personal I was dealing with. And the fact is, Naomi never picked up on her lying, so whatever it is, it's like, she might not be, but she's being upfront with the fact is, I'm not going to tell you because it's personal, but we'll see. I'll keep my thought to myself on whether or not that's the case or not, what I'm thinking, so. But, because I feel like there's nothing that, the thought I'm having, I'm like, there's nothing that conclusively says that, but I'm wondering if there's some correlation there. It'd be interesting if there ends up being this thing, because I think, once again, I'll talk about it if it ever comes up. If it doesn't, I'll reference back to this later on. But, because I like they go around trying to get everyone's access to everyone's social media so they can have an idea of where everyone was 3 nights ago when the disc was stolen. And lo and behold, who are the 3 suspects? Anthony, Lourdes, and Nathan, because they were the ones in her neighborhood at that time. So one of them could have stolen the disc. But it takes Anthony off the list because that stuff doesn't affect aliens. And if Anthony was an alien, he wouldn't have been affected at the camp. So that proves that he's off the list. So it comes down to Lourdes and Nathan, which does lead to a whole game of Never Have I Ever. At first, it's like a very specific never have I ever, and it's like, oh, I've never been to a scene party and more than one party at one night, more than 2 in a night, 3, 4, and just end up being like, oh my God, Lourdes, you legend! Party hopping from, like, I mean, you must have been up all night partying to, like, bounce between 4 different parties. I mean, I guess truth be told, there's no stipulation on, like, how long you had to be at the party. So she could have been at one party for 15 minutes, another one like 3 hours, the next one like 30, but still, party hopping that many parties is kind of wild. Also showing that was that many. I mean, I guess at any point in time there's probably multiple parties somewhere in the general area all happening at the same time, but still. But I really like I said, the mystery element and how that correlates with, like, we're figuring things out as they're being presented to us, because everyone's getting interviewed, like, in the future, but they do a really good job of saying, like, right, something happened, but they're not going into explaining what it was, so. Especially, you knew it concerned Commander Steele because they were referencing him sometimes in the conversation. I was like, he tried to do something, and I was under the impression, I was like, did he die? And this is all about trying to figure out what exactly went down, what happened. Which, in the grand scheme of things, I thought his circumstances was going to be worse than it was. Basically, it seems like it was a heart attack-esque thing that I thought, oh man, did he get like super messed up? To be fair, they were carting him off at the beginning. We didn't see it was him, but it couldn't have been that bad. But I guess I expected things to be way worse for him than what they were. So, but him investigating, showing up at Dee's place, so Dee ends up contacting Zimbardo, and it's like, so we have to assume Commander Steele knows something for him to come here to check up on me, asking how long I've been here. Maybe he knows that, well, we find out later on he was tracking Greg and Jen and Naomi. So maybe it was specifically, it's like, oh, if Naomi comes here so often, there must be some correlation here. Because I don't think he's tracking Dee. He was only tracking their family, so it had to be him tracking Naomi's movements to see where she was. And it's like, if she's coming here all the time, then that means maybe you know what she is. If you're not an alien yourself, you're an alien sympathizer. Because he shows up at the party talking to Greg. And at first I wasn't sure if he was thinking Greg was the alien. Because he kept bringing up, oh, it's interesting how you and Jen found each other. You know, maybe it was meant to be. You know, it is fascinating that just out of the billions of people you just happen to find each other. You found your daughter too. Where'd you adopt her? He was asking too many questions in that regard, but I wasn't sure if like he was trying to think that Greg or Jen might be aliens and or an alien, and maybe he wasn't onto Naomi, but he was. But he kept bringing up the task force. He's like, it's not. He feels like people around him treat aliens like they're innocuous. He sees that if they're here for our resources. They are a threat. You're assuming the worst. I mean, do we not? We now know Superman's a thing. Is Superman here to be an issue? But that's a conversation piece, especially military-wise, whether or not he is. That's not who Christopher Maloney played in. Or did he play John Henry Irons? In Man of Steel, who did Christopher Maloney play? It was a character named Colonel Hardy. I was wondering whether or not he was playing I was like, could it be like this character? I was wondering if there was some correlation there or something. It's like, no. I was even thinking like, could he have been playing like a former John Henry Irons or something? It's like, no, it doesn't matter. That's what I was wondering, but it's a different character. But the reason why I was saying that is because the military has their reasons for the complicated relationship they have with Superman in general, in a world where he already isn't a legend, and him being kind of so mysterious and mystique probably adds to him being viewed as a threat on this world. But obviously, like, even in a world where he's well known and established, he still can be perceived as a threat. So that complicated relationship, so I guess using Superman as an example isn't the best, especially considering in this world, he, like I said, he is this mysterious figure that no one really knows. But he assumes the worst. It's like, these are... He didn't directly say it, because I was under the impression he was going to say something along the lines of, they're here to take over our world. If they're here, that's what they're here for, which he isn't completely wrong on some occasion, but he's assuming the worst, not giving them a chance. And he says that his job... The task force job is to defend, his is to eliminate. He's here to kill the aliens because he's someone that it's all about not only national security, planetary security, but it is mainly like national security, because as a military man, his job first and foremost is to protect this country and do what's in this country's best interest. And this country's best interest is getting rid of extraterrestrial beings that could potentially be a threat. So... And you could tell that he's looking at that point, at the very least, Jen and Greg as sympathizers. So all the stuff with the missing disc and a secret alien, then you add on top of that D and Zimbardo having to show up at the party, and it's like D's wearing a suit. I love that Zimbardo was like, "Do you own anything that isn't black?" He's like, "This is charcoal," and he has to wear this suit, and it ended up. Oh yeah, it's like right. This is Naomi's like, "Oh my god, you look dope," and he's like, "What? What does that mean?" It means you look good. I even love later on, Annabelle's like, "Whoa, D, that looks tight." And he's like, "Yes, it is." I'm like, "Oh wow, I didn't realize D's kind of like Drax from not like all of that kind of goes over his head to some extent, but that's probably more a generational thing." So, but I love that he's just so uncomfortable the entire episode. It's like as the episode's progressing, he's taking off more stuff. It's like, "Oh, where's your jacket?" I had to take it off. It was very restrictive. "Oh, what about this?" I had to take it off because I was uncomfortable. It was too tight. But I do love that he is like, just as he calls it, quote unquote, mingling as he's at the party. He's like, "No, I'm mingling around." She's like, "No, you're here to keep an eye on me." And she's like, "I appreciate that, though." Because Zimbardo and him talk to Jen and Gray. They had their reservations like, "Oh, cool, thanks for letting us know Commander still went to visit you. You can leave now." But Jen had to be, right, we're in this together. Whether we like it or not, they're just as much a part of this as we are. So we have to make sure that Naomi's safe. We have our contingency plan in place. So, and we know at least part of their contingency plan is to just leave Puerto Suego, like they have their go bag. So Naomi discovered that last episode. So I assumed that was going to be the main thing, but it's like, no, they have other contingency plans. And there was an interesting conversation that came up between Jen and Zimbardo where he was like, "I haven't told her everything. Naomi needed to know the truth. It was only a matter of time." He's like, "I waited long enough, plus there's things I haven't told her." I was like, and she's like, "What does that mean?" At first I was like, does he know something about Jen and Greg he hasn't said anything about? And I'll get to that later when we get to that whole thing, but they're breaking into his files and they ended up finding out that he kept an eye on not only them, but Naomi as well, because she was, in his mind, they weren't the suspected aliens she was. They were just alien sympathizers. And Naomi's doing her, testing with the games and stuff, trying to find out whether Lourdes or Nathan are the alien. And she pushes a little too hard, they ask too many specific questions. And he's like, "What's up with that? What's going on?" And she confronts him and she knows he's lying. But it is the sad thing that she's like, "Right, you're lying to me." It's like, yeah, but you're lying to him too. That's the thing of like, it is a double-edged sword. It's like, can you really be mad at him when you're not being fully honest about everything you're going through right now? I mean, but she could tell he's lying about something, and it's just a sad thing. She just assumed the worst. She's like, if you're lying about this, that must mean you still, I forgot what it was that Dee tried to give her advice about. Maybe this is some big misunderstanding. Sadly, turns out it was. Nathan's whole thing was, I was there because I was trying to get stuff because I wanted to ask you to prom. I was setting this whole thing up, trying to be the, like, adorable boyfriend type of situation, which I love. Annabelle was like, "Wait, what? You guys are official? When did that happen?" "Oh, 24 hours ago. And you didn't tell me?" That's BFF territory of you immediately call me when that becomes a thing. And she's like, "I'm sorry." It's like, yeah. I thought that was so sweet. Once again, I love Annabelle and Naomi's relationship so much. I love that dynamic. I also appreciate them trying to make a murder mystery thing. And it's because Jacob got so excited. He's like, "There's been a murder." And Dee's like, "What?" It's like, no, he got so excited. It's like, we're doing this thing where we're pretending like murder mystery party. And it's like, why is murder fun? And it's like, right, right, you're just the butler, just like, and I get, that's an interesting thing. I'd be curious to look and see if that's a thing. I'd assume it is. Apparently, I guess in Agatha Christie books, it's never the butler, because the stereotype is it's always the butler. That's always interesting, too, because of the whole Clue situation. There were so many... The real ending was with the butler, played by Tim Curry, ended up being... Well, spoilers for a movie from the 80s. It's always, Is that where the stereotype about the... I'm sure the stereotype's probably even older than that. But I'd be curious to look into where it is that the butler did it. That's been, like... It's in the pop cultural zeitgeist of like, oh, when something happens, it's like, oh, obviously the butler did it. Just, that's the whole thing, and that she was kind of playing with that. But I am curious, did Agatha Christie make it so that, like, no, the butler never did do it? Because that must mean that goes that far back, that like everyone always suspects the butler. So maybe she wrote those books so it's never the butler, just because everyone just assumes that it's too easy. So because of that, she always made it probably seem like it was a butler sometimes, when in actuality it never was. I'd be interested to really deep dive into that, but the way Annabelle talked about it, it seemed like that was the case. But I love that, just, she's like, yeah, you're probably not the killer. I mean, not only because you're not the butler, but also you do have those tattoos and you have that very, like, scary face, and you're just always serious. And just like, yeah, but I'm sure you're not the killer. It's fine. And I loved it. She's just like, I'm the butler? So I just thought that was kind of a fun way that they were trying to keep everyone at the party. I wish we would have had spent some time with that to be able to see everything go down. I mean, did they actually do anything with the whole murder mystery party thing? Or did they just set it up and say that that's what they're doing but never really did anything with it? It probably happened, but we just didn't get to see it, which is kind of a bummer. Naomi going to the school with Lourdes because trying to get everyone's photos taken by Anthony, who just taking photos of everyone because he is the camera dude. Photography club and all of that. Is it actually photography club, or is it just him just straight up just liking photography? Either way, they need a very special compound that makes it so that aliens present a blue eye. It's very specific chemical compounds you have to use, because even Annabelle was like, I've taken pictures with Naomi all the time and I've never seen like her have blue eyes. It's like, yeah, but it has to be like film photos and not digital photos. So went to get those chemicals, asking Lourdes about stuff, and Lourdes is like, right, there's stuff that you're going through that you haven't told me. Once again, it plays into that Nathan stuff of, yeah, you haven't told him everything, so people are entitled to have their secrets, and that was the whole point Lourdes is making. But it's like, right, if you want to say something, if you ever want to talk to me about anything, I'm here for you. And it does seem like there's still a little bit of that Lourdes and thing, because like when they're reaching for the box, it's kind of almost like this awkward moment of them looking at each other, because it's like, yeah, it's still kind of a thing regardless. But then they both find Nathan there, and like I said, Nathan was setting that whole thing up, and he thinks him and Naomi are still together, but he's going to need to take because it's like, right, not only did you assume the worst, thinking I stole from you, and then on top of that, you thought you're calling you out for lying to you, which I was, but I had my reasons, and you just assumed the worst. He's like, yeah, so he thinks they're still a couple. It's just like they're going through a rough patch. And by the time Naomi got back home, like Nathan had already left, so that was sad. So we'll see whether or not they can repair things going forward. Part of me was almost thinking for a second, it's like, well, he's from a military family. Like, do you think Nathan's getting close to Naomi just to keep tabs on her? Like, I was like, are we going to find out that's Nathan's secret or something like that? That it'd be almost this Romeo and Juliet thing. Well, there's the show that was short-lived on the CW. Star-Crossed is about star-crossed lovers in the literal sense of a human falling for an alien. I mean, another example of that would be Roswell, New Mexico, Liz and Max, you know. Well, there's also the Alex and Michael situation, and then there's Isabel's. They're all dating humans right now. Now that I think about it, that show is a whole example of that. But I was wondering if that could be where Nathan and her end up. And I'm curious when she's going to tell the others, when she's going to tell Anthony, Lourdes, and Nathan. Because eventually she's going to have to, because they're all going to have to come together, I'm sure, like in some big finale type of way. So it's going to be interesting to see when that comes out. But for now, it just seems like, wow, you didn't trust me. And she leaves. And at least she has other people she can talk to about this. Not just like Dee Zubato, stuff that she can't talk to her parents about. She can talk to Jacob and Annabelle about it, but even at the end we see she does keep some secrets, because someone shows up to save her at the end. I'm like, oh my god, it's Lourdes, isn't it? Because like, she went back to the van, so I'm like, who is it? And by the time they circle back to it, I was like, oh my god, it's going to be Jen, isn't it? I was like, it's only going to be one of them. It's going to end up being Jen. It ended up being both of her parents. I was like, yo! Twist upon twist. Because, like I said, I only suspected Jen at the last second. I was like, oh, it's going to be Jen. Didn't expect to be her and Greg. That was interesting. But it's also, and I thought that was a fascinating explanation too, because for D, he's like, why couldn't I sense them? And Zimbardo says, there are aliens without ability. So it seems like D's wings can only sense aliens' abilities, is how he's able to sense them. But if they don't have abilities, which is why they use those rocks to that element to I'm going to butcher saying it again, so I'm not that D element that hurts humans. They use that. So no wonder that car ride was super awkward. You're like, right, are you okay? I just want to go home. Now it's like you find secret upon secret about your family. You find out not only have they been lying to you for years about you being an alien, they've been lying to you years for the fact is that they are aliens, that they always tell each other the truth, and it seems like sadly that doesn't apply to you because they've lied to you again and again and again. And the whole go bag isn't just about, well, it is about protecting Naomi, and that's why they're like, right, if we get busted, it's one thing, but I'm sure for them, it's all right, we're going to try to prevent that so we can stay together as a family, but their top priority isn't, but I wonder will Naomi question that, be like, right, was it just solely to protect me, or were you about protecting your own secret as well? But once again, she doesn't tell Annabelle or Jacob at the end because it's her trying to process it all, and it's like, wait, is this really what it is? And she looks at the photo, and it's like, yeah, it confirms it, all three of them having blue eyes. So, like I said, that was a development, once again, that Agatha Christie twist at the very end that Annabelle was talking about. That was a fascinating development. So they wiped the hard drive of anything pointing towards any concrete evidence he had that Naomi was an alien, but they just made it seem like, oh, he was crazy, that yes, he's looking into aliens and stuff, but he just created this fantasy in his head. We don't know why he targeted your family, but it seems that he's out of it right now, and it's like the moment he wakes up, like a military police will kind of be doing investigation into him and get to the bottom of this. So everything's dealt with for now, but the shock and the truth of everything is hitting Naomi. Now, the thing I brought up earlier about Zimbardo, that line of, because I have honor, I haven't told her everything. And Jim was like, what does that mean? I think Zimbardo knew that they were aliens because I think either he knew a different version of them, like maybe on Earth 29, because he implied like her parents are dead. I think on Earth 29, they were her parents and they also had powers as aliens. So maybe that's why, or it could just be like, no, he might just in general, that's what my mind immediately went to. It could be a multiverse thing of like, oh, he's encountered like your Earth 29 counterparts. And I was like, you don't think like, I was like, no, I don't think that's the case. I was wondering for a second, I was like, could they be like Naomi's parents on Earth 29? But I was like, no. Like a different version of them. This is this Earth's version of Jen and Greg, which also adds to the star-crossed lovers thing of like, right, them both being aliens and finding each other. Like, did they find each other? Like, wow, oh my God, I'm not the only alien on this planet, neither am I. And then they find an alien daughter too, so it worked out perfectly. Don't have to feel so alone in this world, so there is some beauty to that, despite the complications of Naomi finding out just so much of her life is a lie, plus everything with Nathan, just like life's turned upside down. But I guess in general, Zimbardo, maybe with his abilities or something, he's always known that Greg and Jen are aliens. It's like, right, I had to tell Naomi this, but at the end of the day, it's Naomi's secret. She deserves to know. She needs to know to be prepared for what's to come. But at the end of the day, your secret is your secret, and it's not my right to spill that. You'll tell Naomi when you're ready. So when it's something that is necessary for Naomi to know, her parents being aliens isn't something she needed to know. About who she really was because she needed to have access to her powers so that she can defend herself, because Brutus is coming and she needs to be prepared to survive, and she's also the only one that can save their world. So a lot of those elements influenced Zimbardo's decision to get involved with her from the beginning. So that's what I think. Now sitting here talking it out, it seems like that's most likely the case. He could probably sense that they were aliens and he just kept quiet the entire time. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.